Welcome back to Mean Streets, where each week we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir. I'm Luke Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth.
And today's case is 1978's TV miniseries, The DAIN Curse, starring James Coburn, Jason Miller, and Nancy Addison, directed by E.W. Swackhamer, and oddly enough, an ambiguous writing credit, but the writer of the piece is Robert W. Lenski, though he's listed as a creator. And it's based off the Dashiell Hammett novel, The DAIN Curse, featuring one of his most popular detectives, the Continental Op. Matt, The DAIN Curse. First off, we should say Happy Valentine's Day, because this is
Happy Valentine's Day,
everyone. This is your lovey-dovey episode for February 14th. You know, cuddle up to your missus and listen to an episode about a 3-hour-long movie.
Yeah. I started watching this on Thursday, and I've only just finished. This is a long film. I mean, we'll get into it, but it's a long piece. But yeah,
it is.
It's a nice but dark accompaniment to Valentine's Day. So there we go.
Yes. Perfectly it's got a romance. It's got a lady who's in love with a man, and a man who's in love with a lady, and they have a romance. And it ends badly. But there's also another romance. But like like Valentine's Day, it's also superficial. So
there we go. It's perfect. You know, it's a perfect match for the day.
It is a perfect Valentine's Day episode.
Call us cynical sleuths, but we see too much of this.
The cynical cinematic sleuths is us. I did not know this existed, so you brought it to my attention about a week or two ago.
About a week or two ago, purely by chance. I was just sort of skimming Amazon Prime, really, and one of the recommendations that it gave me was this, and I didn't know this existed. So I was straight onto the phone to you, wasn't I, and said, "Did you know there's a film of the DAIN Curse?" Because at the time I thought it was a film.
Yes.
And what caught me was the image that went with the Amazon Prime advert was James Coburn, and I'm a big James Coburn fan. You'd never heard of it. I asked some friends of mine. Only one that I've come across so far has seen it. 2 have heard of it, and the other one decided not to watch it. So it's not a well-known film, I don't think, unless if anybody out there has seen it and knows it, let us know. But I'd never heard of this.
No,
until a week ago.
Yeah, there is scarce information about this film stroke miniseries on the internet. IMDb is riddled with errors and inconsistencies. It's to try and get actual information about this film is tough. It was tough going. So I mean, we've pieced together a little bit of information about it, but it's one of those really odd pieces of noir history that is forgotten. And I think not for the better. I don't love this, but I don't hate it. Right. So I'll say that out the gate, but it's as an adaptation, it's fairly close to Dashiell Hammett's novel. Right.
Yeah, if we're going straight out of the gates, I'm going to say that I didn't hate this either. There is a really big drawback for me, which we'll come on to, but it's a very superficial one. But I thought this was good fun. I thought this was great fun, and all the time watching it, I was thinking, this is as adaptations go, certainly for TV. This is pretty faithful.
It is. It's a strong adaptation, which I got to give it credit for. I'll give it credit for making the effort to make a pretty solid one. But I guess we can just kind of talk a little bit, kind of go behind the camera a bit and talk a little bit about the creators of this. Yeah. There's not really a lot to say. We don't really know much about the production. It's it's scarce. The information is scarce. But like I said, it was directed by E.W. Swackhamer, which, what a name.
And it was a name that was instantly recognizable to me for a very special reason.
Why? The Hardy Boys?
Because, no, Spider-Man.
Ah.
This fella, Swackhamer, directed the pilot episode of what became the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man TV series in the 70s. So the year before this came out, so 1977 was Spider-Man. This came out in 1978. And for gentlemen of a certain age, Nicholas Hammond is Spider-Man, so he is Spider-Man to me. And although it looks ropey to these days, you couldn't beat it when you were 6 or 7 years old back in the day. So,
no.
But what struck me now, I mean, you watch Spider-Man now and it's creaky as hell, but given that there's only a year between these two directing assignments, there's a world of difference between them. This is a much more accomplished piece of work than the Spider-Man pilot.
Yes.
By a long margin.
Is this Spider-Man pilot live action? Or was this?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Is this that weird live action Spider-Man movie that you can find on YouTube?
Yeah, that's the one where it's all about mind control.
Oh my God, he directed that one. I looked at it and thought it was a cartoon. I didn't clock. I have a story about that Spider-Man movie. I remember being with my parents at a video rental store in the 90s, back when you rented VHSs, because I am that old. I
remember Betamax, so don't get too cocky.
I mean, Betamax would have been around when I was a baby, so I'm still pretty old. But we were walking the aisles, and I remember seeing the VHS case for that Spider-Man movie. And I was like, there's a live action Spider-Man? I'm like, 7 at the time, 6, 7. And they're like, I've seen things like the live action Mario movie, all the Batman, Superman movies. And I'm like, never had I known that there was a Spider-Man one. Walked around the shop, didn't pick it up, went back to get it because I was able to talk my parents into getting it. It was gone. It wasn't on the shelf. And I never saw it again. Ever.
You should. Have you watched it? Of
course I've seen it. Of course I've seen it on YouTube.
Seen it now.
It's terrible.
Right. It's horrendous. It's one of the least dramatic films of all time.
Yes, super boring.
He gets thrown off a building and you don't care.
No. So,
but yeah, Swackhamer directed that. I don't think he directed the other, like the second pilot, if you can have such a thing. The second feature length version of Nicholas Hammond's Spider-Man. I don't think he did that. I think it was just the first one.
Right.
But having said that, it's the least dramatic film, one of the least dramatic films ever made. That's really my point. That the Spider-Man is so dull.
Yes.
But this isn't dull. There's a world of difference between these two products.
I mean, I would put money on bad, terrible production with Spider-Man. Because
cash.
Swackhamer. You have to bear with me because I'm sick, and I'm sick of being sick. So I might cough, I might sneeze, whatever. But yeah, Swackhamer, his catalog of directing credits is quite impressive. I mean, he pretty much anything famous from the 60s and 70s into the 80s he worked on. So like Bewitched, MASH, The Partridge Family, Murder, She Wrote. Quincy. He directed Columbo Goes to College. He's clearly his accomplished television director. And I think I can't really fault. I don't have any problem with the direction of the DAIN Curse.
No, I wonder whether Coburn was vocal on set about some of this and how much input he had, because he was a big star at the time.
Yeah. And
I think we'll come on to why he did it in the first place, perhaps, because I have theories about that. But I think he probably brought some cinematic scope to what was probably otherwise be written off just as TV. So I wonder whether he had any influence on Swackhamer.
I'm not sure, but what is interesting is I was looking into like appointment television of the era, and the DAIN Curse is something that kind of falls into what would have been appointment television back in the day. I was able to find a couple of like old-ish reviews of this TV show, and that's essentially what they were saying. This was kind of the show that you would, Coburn is a huge actor. People are going to. I mean, it's a 6-part series. It's a huge miniseries. It's
a huge
equivalent
miniseries.
of like an HBO miniseries that you want to make sure you're in front of, so you don't miss. So it, I think it probably had an appeal because the other thing is production value is incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
The costuming is gorgeous. The set design is
very,
brilliant. Very well done. Like I was, when I found out that this, first you mentioned to me, I thought it was a movie, then saw it was this version that we saw was 3 hours long. I thought, oh my God, this is not a film. Looked it up, saw it was a mini series. Thought, oh, okay, that makes more sense. So therefore I went in with the idea, this is a TV show. This is, we watch things like Fallen Angels. That has some pretty ropey set design, some pretty ropey directing. This, on the other hand, for a TV show, aside from basically using like television blocking, everything else is cinematic.
Yeah, and a fondness for like close-ups, which is very televisual. But a lot of this is cinematic. A lot of it is. I wouldn't be surprised if this did crop up on the big screen, and I think it would hold its own. It might look it. You might say it's a low budget movie, which it would be by comparison. But in terms of how it is shot, lit, and decorated, I think it's pretty good. And I think it's better than you imagine a TV movie to be. That's what I'm going to say. That's how I'm going to pitch it.
Because I guess what we have to kind of differentiate is TV movies of the 90s and into like early 2000s, kind of straight to DVD, straight to VHS. Those are terrible. Those aren't things that you actually want to see. This was sort of on another level. This is obviously way back before. You're not recording things off the television. You can't go and see, you can't just pop in your VHS of Star Wars or whatever. This is way back when there was more of a prestige around certain television shows.
And some TV movies were released theatrically. The Incredible Hulk is a famous example of that, the Bill Bixby pilot, which I don't think was released theatrically in the States, but it certainly was in Europe. As was the season 2 or 3 one where he gets married. That was also released as Bride of the Incredible Hulk, and that's because they were shot as films and treated as films. So you're right, there is a sort of higher degree of care, I suppose, taken with TV movies in the 70s. But even so, having said that, this still looks brilliant, and I thought we're going to be in for a good ride here. When the credits were a bit cheesy, but once it started, the music I thought was a bit cheesy as well, a bit too much of it. But once it started, I thought, my God, this is going to be pretty good, actually.
Yeah,
and I didn't really waver from that too much. Some issues, but I didn't really waver from that too much.
No, but again, like in terms of its like airing date, like it aired in May, which is a big time. At that time was a big slot for ratings for the networks that it would have appeared on, and it went up against some big shows at the time. So there was clearly a sense of quality that I think that was kind of viewed that this was going to have prestigeness to it, and it did surprise me because I really was expecting kind of cheap quality. And to not have that was really nice. Like you mentioned the opening credits, they were pretty cheap. They were cheesy. The opening music was really happy-go-lucky and a bit silly, but then later throughout, as the film progresses, the music is actually quite good.
It is. It certainly improves as it goes on. But you're right, and I went into this. I'm going to say this the wrong way. I know I am, but with no expectations. But by that, I don't mean, I don't know anything about this film. I don't know anything about this story. I don't know anything about this cast or anything like that. What I mean is, I'm not expecting to get very much out of this. So because I went in like that, I wasn't expecting very much, and I thought, well, I won't be disappointed because I suspect that's what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. Very pleasantly surprised.
In some ways I was too. In other ways, I wasn't. Before we dive into
I'm talking
story,
I'm talking generally. I'm talking sort of overall impression.
Sure.
This could have been 3 hours of absolute horrendous boredom, but it wasn't. But
no,
we'll come on to that.
No. So there isn't a writer credit, which I found interesting. The creator credit is Robert Lenski, who wrote for shows like Mannix in the 60s. That's a huge, like, kind of private eye investigative show. So and a slew of others. Why he doesn't have a writer's credit, I'm not sure. I've seen speculation that it might be because the script is so close to the novel that it's just Dashiell Hammett's work on screen. But it's weird. I mean, it's odd. It's weird that there isn't a written by credit.
It is strange. I'm not sure I'd buy that explanation. There are faithful adaptations out there that, people still get dramatized by or adapted by credits.
I mean, hey, last week, the last episode we just did, Sin City, no written by credit, based on the works of Frank Miller.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It is strange when that happens. It's very odd when that happens.
Yeah, I don't get it.
No, I don't get it because it's not even as if like he's developed anything. He's not sort of taken the book and sort of remolded it in any way. It really is very sort of slavish almost to the book,
for better or worse.
So, because if it was a miniseries and they said created by, then but he truncated it, or he'd, in some way molded it to be something that was slightly different, I could understand it more. But he hasn't done that, so I don't really understand why he hasn't got a dramatized by. But maybe Hammett's too big a name. I don't know.
It's confusing. It's confusing and interesting. I wish there was more information out there. I really do, because it's just...
If anybody does know, let us know, because it's a fascinating piece.
It is. It's nuts. But it does have generally a really stellar cast. Obviously, there's Coburn himself. Brent Spiner. There's some Star Trek alumni in here. Brent Spiner is in here. 10 years
very
before
young.
He becomes Data.
He looks very young.
He is very young. I was like, oh, he must be like 20 something in here. Yeah, a bunch of other people you sort of recognize.
You've got some you've got Gene Simmons in this, in a fairly
Star Trek alum
role.
Yep.
Apparently. So you tell me. I know from from Spartacus and things like that. But yeah,
yes.
But she's like, I mean, she was a big name even at this time.
Yeah.
And Jason Miller. I mean, I could not believe my eyes when Jason Miller appeared.
Yes.
So this is 4 years after The Exorcist, and a performance so different you could not find from Damien Karras to Owen Fitzstephens. It's a world apart. But
yes,
I mean, mixed in with what I assume you perhaps will know better than me, but I assume is sort of TV acting fodder. But at the heart is James Coburn, who is proper Hollywood gold.
He is. You mentioned earlier that there's this sort of a prestigeness to this, and I like Coburn generally. I like him in this movie, but he does sort of stand out to me as maybe a little bit too Hollywood for this movie. For those if you've read Dashiell Hammett's work, if you've read any of the stories by the Continental Op, you couldn't find someone more different in visual appearance. The Op is meant to be a short, chubby everyman. There's a reason why Dashiell Hammett never gave him a name in his short story, in the stories, and just called him the Continental Op. And it's because he was thinking everyone he could be anyone. He can be any man who's reading this story of his. And they've replaced him with a tall, suave, well-dressed, good-looking man.
This is like Christopher Lee playing Hercule Poirot.
Yes.
Physically, you couldn't get more different than this actor and character. But I think they get over that by obviously styling him on Hammett himself. He's got Hammett. He dresses like Hammett, and he's got a moustache like Hammett, and to all intents and purposes, he's got his hair like Hammett. Although that is Coburn's actual hair. And of course, they call it. He has a name in this because I suppose if you're going to watch 3 hours of a film or 6 hours of a miniseries, you've got to give your main character a name. And they call him Hamilton Nash, which make of that what you will, but it does allow people to call him Ham.
Yes.
Dashiell
so Hammett, Hammond, Ham, like it's all there. Like
it's all there.
I
am a Coburn fan. I think he's really good. And he's in one of my favorite crime films, which is The Last of Sheila, which is everything Glass Onion wanted to be and wasn't. So I was just pleased to see him, and I thought he brought a bit of class to it that perhaps somebody else would have lacked. But I knew straight away that this was not the Continental Op. And I think giving him a name, this is a personal opinion, giving him a name made it easier for me to accept James Coburn as Hamilton Nash rather than the Continental Op. So I'm thinking, fair enough, we're not going with what I think the Op is. This is just someone else's private eye investigating Dashiell Hammett's story. Fair enough, I can live with that. And he looks a bit like Hammett himself. I think that's a narrative cinematic device that I could forgive, really.
Yeah. The other thing they changed is there is no Continental Detective Agency, but there is the Dickerson National Detective Agency. So they've even changed that. So it's the story in that the plot is the same story, but oddly they've changed the protagonists.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Exactly. It's like having Sherlock Holmes on the Orient Express.
Kind of, yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that sort of change, but I think for a much more acceptable reason.
Which is
there would be no good reason to put Holmes on the Orient Express. Well, I think only because, like I said before, you've got to give the op a name, I think, if you're going to do it as a dramatized version. People can't just not call him anything.
I just think they call him the Op.
Well, they could call him the Op. Well, his colleagues could call him the Op, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You got films like Fight Club. The narrator, he doesn't have a name. He's just called the narrator. He doesn't have a name.
Yeah, okay.
I think it could.
But I think once you decided, if they said, well, we can't. If they said at the time we can't have him nameless, then once you're going to give him a name, then he's not going to be the Continental Op, is he? I think that's really what I'm trying to get across. Well, once that decision has been made, you might as well throw everything out of the window.
See, I don't agree. I don't agree, sir. I don't agree. Giving him a name is fine. Still call him Hamilton Nash. But I think if he's going to be the Op, you then need to think about those other characteristics that are important to the Continental Op. Whether, like, his physical characteristics, is he going to have those? And here they don't. So it's thrown out. It's thrown out completely, and it works fine enough. And it's probably because the Continental Op is not as famous? He's not Sam Spade.
Well, I do wonder if it's that as well. But like I say, I was just pleased to see Coburn, but I would equally have been pleased to see someone like, I don't know, Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, he would have been a perfect stature for a.
That's what I think the Continental Op looks like.
That could work.
Or is a certain, that's sort of broad outline of what I think he should look like.
Yes.
So the question then is, would it have got sold if it wasn't Coburn? I mean, you don't know. There's all sorts of things that you can get into on this. But
yeah,
given this is what we've got, I think Coburn's pretty good, and I think he has. He does what the op does, doesn't he? But you're right, he doesn't do it in the way that the op necessarily behaves as a person, as a man.
What do you think?
And you're either going to accept that or you're not, aren't you? You're either going to accept that or not.
Yeah, when I think about the Continental op, he's a bit more world weary. He is a bit more cynical. He is a bit more jaded, I think, and all of that was missing from Coburn and his performance.
Yeah.
He was, as I said, he was suave. He was well dressed. He had some really good wit about him. He was his back and forth with the various police officers and the different suspects and things like that. That all came across really well. It came across natural. Had a charm and a funniness to it that you sort of want from a hard-boiled detective. But in terms of feeling like this is a world-weary guy, or like what I feel the op is, someone whose probably clothes are a little bit disheveled, a little off the rack. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. But and I the closest he comes for me is the final scene where he's walking away from it all, and he says,
"Yeah,
I'm going back to women who have guns in the garters and people peddling dope or whatever he says, and I'm just a detective." Fair enough.
Yeah,
that's the closest that he gets to the op of the books, I think, because it's almost as if he's sort of become jaded through the course of this long film. But I wonder whether at the time, is the op too cynical? Is he too jaded? Does he lack some of the attractiveness, even if that's anti-hero attractiveness, of someone like Spade or Marlowe or Harper and all the ones that we talked about previously on the show? Is that why we don't get many Continental op films?
Despite there being an absolute slew of stories to be able to pull
loads of them. Yeah, loads of them. So I mean, that is a question. That is an important question, I think. Why is the op not better known than he is? Because if you said to somebody in the street, name me a Dashiell Hammett detective, they are going to say Sam Spade, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to say Maltese Falcon, definitely.
They're going to say Maltese Falcon and Sam Spade. They're not going to say the Continental op.
No, no.
So maybe, maybe it's a lot of things put into the decision, a lot of different things, a lot of different opinions all put together to decide, to make the choice not to call him the Continental op and cast somebody who looks like him and to give it to James Coburn and call him Hamilton Nash.
Maybe.
Which then becomes he's just a private detective.
Yeah.
He's just Hamilton Nash, whoever he may be.
Yes.
We get to learn who he is. We get to learn some things about him. But he isn't the detective in Hammett's novel. No,
it's an interesting compromise, I guess, having a very faithful adaptation with the main character completely
totally changed.
He had a complete makeover. It's a very interesting choice. It's an odd one, but despite my reservations, I still think it mostly works because Coburn has a presence that is charming and interesting, and there are a few things that do keep you guessing. I mean, for example, his relationship with Gabrielle. He meets her at her parents' house where there's stolen diamonds and it's all swoozy, and she's tripped out on drugs and she's off her rocker a little bit, and he's intrigued by her, and eventually this whole story is all about their relationship, and they hint very strongly throughout the piece that the reason he's so interested in helping her and solving the curse, and for those who don't know, the curse is that throughout her life, people around Gabriella always die. Her father dies, her mother dies, her fiance dies. The curse is that all these people around her keep dying. And he's trying to solve it. And there is a hint or two that he might also be in love with her. And, how do you think they handled that?
Certainly the initial fascination, I think they do well. I think that comes across quite nicely. You certainly do, as this piece goes on, as this film goes on, you do get the impression that he's falling in love with her, and people start making quips at him. That they start calling her your baby.
Your baby, yeah.
They start saying things to him that suggest that he's got more than a professional interest in her. And all the time he's knocking those back, with a quip of his own or a put down, and all that sort of fair play fodder in this sort of story. But the time comes when he does sort of say to her, maybe I'm frightened, I might have feelings for you.
But is he lying or is he telling the truth?
Well, I don't know. Well, you see, I think that Coburn is good in that scene. I think Coburn sells that scene.
He is.
And the fact that we don't know, or we're not prepared to say, I think he's down to that performance more than anything else. Because you could easily play that as one way or the other, So that's a Coburn point for me, and it works very well. I'm not sure. I don't think he says at the end. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's harder to accept that things aren't going to go the way you want them to go, or things aren't going to be easy. It's easy to accept that things won't go your way, or something like that. Which is why he's able to walk away from her. But I don't know. He just doesn't. I don't get the impression that he really does fall in love with her. Not in the way that I get the impression that Spade is in love with Bridget Shaughnessy.
No,
not in the way that I think Marlowe falls in love with almost every woman he comes across.
No,
I wonder if he is sort of playing her a little bit. But I mean, does he? Is he?
Yeah. I feel that he is, because the thing is, it's and this is where the this is kind of maybe also a weak point of the film, and that is Coburn's performance when he's dealing with Gabriella is it blatantly comes across as fatherly.
Yeah.
So anytime the other characters, like the drunk Irishman, incessantly drunk Irishman, is making comments about him falling in love with her, him being in love with her, calling her baby, his baby, all that kind of stuff, felt wrong.
Yeah.
And I think, and I was trying to work out, does it feel wrong because Hamilton Dash is a, 50s something year old man, and she's I think she's meant to be probably in her 20s or something, but the actress seems to be more like in her 30s or 40s. Visually, there wasn't a striking age difference between the two, I don't think, but I think they're meant to be longer. But anyway,
Coburn will have been dead on 50 when this is released.
Okay, so that was the thing. Even when they were teasing about him being in love with her, the actress Addison, she wasn't young. I'll put it that way. She was, as Deckard would say, a handsome woman.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think she's as young as the character in the book is supposed to be, is she?
No. But I will say, because she was meant to be young, because my wife watched a little bit of this at the opening, and when the parents when her parents were on screen and she was there, Claire was like, she's as old as the parents. What's going on here? And it's like, there's not a big enough age gap with these actors. But that's what, but to get back to my point is when they mention the love stuff, it's just not strong enough, and he's not acting in that way. And when he is acting interested in her, it's in isolated moments when he's trying to get her off drugs. Yeah. And it's clear to me that he's manipulating her to get her off drugs.
Well, that's where I come down on it. That's what I think he's doing. And because I think there's the bit where he says, "I'm frightened I may have feelings for you." And I wonder how I'll react, or something like that, he says. And that's in the middle of that bit you're talking about, that sequence you're talking about, where he's making it go cold turkey. And that's quite a good sequence, I think. Goes on forever, but it's quite a good sequence in that it's sort of, it's not the average thing you see in a film like this. It's something a bit different. And Coburn is good in it. But like I say, it goes on for far too long. But in his scenes in those bits, he is fatherly, and I can easily read into I'm frightened how I feel about you, because if you were, I wonder if I'd be doing this if you were my daughter, if I was your father, would I do this to save you? And I'm frightened that I'm getting emotional fatherly feelings rather than lover sexual feelings.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Up until this point, he is a lone wolf, isn't he? His wife's done one with whoever it is, the ice cream man or something.
The Iceman. The Iceman,
yeah, that's right.
Run off with the Iceman. But we still don't know if that's true or not.
We still don't know if that's true, no, because he
tells the story, but I think
stories,
he's lying.
Yeah. So he comes across as an isolated man who sort of does this, as they all do, who does this job because there's nobody waiting for him at home.
Yeah. And
he's frightened that if he has some sort of emotional connection to somebody, and that doesn't always have to be sex, let's be honest.
No.
And it's quite frank, it's a refreshing change when it isn't. To be, that is a chink in his armor. That is that is something that takes away a bit of his protection. And I think that's what he's hinting at in that scene.
Yeah.
Because why else does he want to get her off the drug? He can't for a minute believe that he's got a romantic chance with her. I don't accept that. She might think she has with him. That's a different story. That's a different question. But I don't think he believes it or wants it. I think he wants to save her because she's the daughter. He's come to think of her as the daughter he's never had.
Yeah. Yeah. She's been horribly manipulated and abused.
By everybody, including him. Including him.
Yes.
But he's doing
She's
it.
not been abused. He did not abuse her, but he did.
No, but he's manipulating her
emotionally
to save
manipulating
her. He's manipulating her to save her, to get her into a position. Because he taunts her with some of the drugs, doesn't he?
Yes.
As a test to see how well she's doing. And
yes.
We know how that goes.
You mentioned that it was, we haven't really seen anything like this. I was thinking this is very much the scene and what was happening and how long it was playing out did very much remind me of the 7% Solution, which would have been out by this time.
2 years earlier, yeah. That never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Never crossed my mind as well.
And it made me wonder. Well, it made me wonder if that was part of the reason that this was greenlit. Like, oh, that Sherlock Holmes movie did really well tackling, drug addiction. What else do we got?
Well, maybe. Although the DAIN Curse, of course, as the book was around before.
No, yeah, the book obviously predates 7% Solution by a long yard. But I mean,
the chances of anyone having read,
in terms of on-screen presentation, that was a really big film. What were other people looking at that was maybe a little bit similar? Oh, we got this other crime story over here, Dashiell Hammett. He's really popular. He was, Oh yeah.
Well, now I've thought about it. There is also a similar scene in The French Connection 2, because in the French, which is 3 years before this, 75. Because in The French Connection 2, the villains get hold of Gene Hackman, Popeye Doyle, Gene Hackman's character, and make him a heroin addict.
Oh.
So he has to, it's pretty brutal actually. So he has to essentially cold turkey himself. So you're right, actually. You're right, actually. There's a 7% Solution, The French Connection 2, all around this time.
Yeah. With
a character going cold turkey.
Yeah.
And a pretty dodgy episode of Starsky and Hutch, but I can't believe that anyone was influenced because I think they stole that from The French Connection 2, but Hutch becomes a cocaine addict, I think.
Of course.
But anyway, we're diverting.
No.
But yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. It didn't occur to me when I was watching it at all.
Yeah. It's clearly, I feel like it was pulling on themes of the time, and there seems to be a good number of similar thematic big products, 7%.
Yeah, that's a good point.
French Connection 2. Yeah, it's there was something to it that's like, we're not remaking the Maltese Falcon. We're not making any other Continental Op story. We're going to do this one, which is honestly not my favorite.
No, it's not my favorite.
I'm not a fan of this book. I struggled to get through it. It's horribly convoluted.
It is convoluted, but it's not convoluted in the in the fun way that The Big Sleep is, for example.
Correct.
The Big Sleep is a wild ride, and I think I said this when we covered The Big Sleep. It's only afterwards when you put the book down or you turn the film off and you go, man, I enjoyed that.
Yes.
And then you go, wait a minute.
What the fuck happened?
What was it about?
Yes.
But as it's going on, you don't have any of those feelings. I remember reading the DAIN Curse, and I will confess I've only read it twice, perhaps, because I can't get on with it, really.
No.
If we're being honest. And I had the same problem with this film, and the book seems to be repetitive to me.
Yeah.
Because he keeps being hired to go and look for this girl all the time.
Yes.
And the film suffers the same plot problem for me.
He keeps
saying that, you know, the DAIN Curse case was over, and then the next scene he's back on it. You know, and then it's over again, and then he's back on it, you know, and then come on. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, you know, it has a tiring feel to it, and it's I feel like because this film is basically Dashiell Hammett almost verbatim. I feel like Dashiell Hammett wrote the opening, and with the diamond heist and that big climactic ending, and thought that was really good, and it is. What am I going to do next? How am I going to pad out the rest of this goddamn book? But he was writing this as serial for the Black Mask magazine back in the day. And you can feel that with certain serialized stories like this in news and magazines back in the day, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to start writing this story. I'll send that off. That'll get published. What the shit happens next? You feel it with Sherlock Holmes stories. You feel it with
Sherlock Holmes stories. What if you read The Count of Monte Cristo as a novel, then you can see that by the time he's done installment 572, he's forgotten. He's forgotten what installment 1 had said, because if you read it as a continuous novel, it's all over the place.
Yes,
all over the place. You forget who people are. I'm sure that people change identities in that book. And it's the same with this, because you know, this is essentially a serialized story, or serialized stories bunched together into a novel.
Yes,
and it shows.
It does. I mean, interestingly, because as we were watching, it was 3 hours long. It seems long enough, but I was finding reviews where people were saying, don't watch this particular version. Like, what are they talking about? And the 3-hour version is terrible. I'm like, wait, what? And then I looked it up, and the actual runtime for the miniseries is 4 hours and 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And you can buy it you can't buy it on DVD here in the UK, but you can buy it in the US. It's very expensive. It's like $50 or something like that. And there's a part of me that's like, I kind of want to see the whole thing.
So do I, because I really do. Because I think there are bits missing that make this.
Well, there are bits missing.
Meaningless.
And that's what I was finding out. People are saying, I've watched this version. I can't make heads or tails of certain things. And I was feeling, basically, once the beginning is over, once he solves the diamond stuff, everything else after that is, if you can make heads or tails of where we're meant to be going and what's happening, you are a genius. Because I was so fucking lost.
Yeah, I was lost. I'm glad you said this, because I rewound it. I thought, I've missed something, because they're suddenly talking about a murder I don't remember.
Yeah, Eric Collinson. When the hell did he die?
Because the last time I saw him, I was thinking to myself, the last time I saw him, he was helping Nash out of an elevator.
Yeah.
That he collapsed in after being drugged in his room.
Yes.
Now he's telling me he's dead.
Yeah.
And then he goes to Collinson's dad and says, you gave me a pretty speech when you hired me. And I thought, when was that?
Yes. Yes.
I want to see that pretty speech.
It's fucking annoying. It's really fucking annoying.
I thought I was losing my mind. I was thinking, God, you need to get more sleep.
Okay, I mean, I watched this in 2 parts. I watched the first hour and a half, which leads up to him right after he leaves the Temple of the Holy Grail. Then the next day, I watched the next bit, and they're talking about Collinson's death, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, yeah.
That guy wasn't dead. Who's Collinson? Wait, that's the guy. He's not dead. When did he die?
And the trial scene at the end. The trial scene at the end, they're talking about people I don't remember.
I mean,
I was
in
really
terms of editing. I mean, here's the problem. Here's my problem. This is the big problem with this. And if you're gonna watch the 3-hour version, I would say be cautious about it, because this is what's available and this is how it's being presented. So this is why we're reviewing this particular book, because this is what's available. But you watch the opening, it's great. The first section is great. The first, I'm assuming, episode. But I'm assuming the second episode is meant to be the Temple of the Holy Grail, and probably meant to be her coming off of drugs. And I'm assuming the third episode is a courtroom drama. And they truncate the courtroom drama. This is pure speculation because I don't know. But for it being 6 hours long, the courtroom drama is truncated to about 20 minutes, the last 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Guarantee you that's longer in the show, in the actual miniseries.
Definitely.
Has to be.
And it loses a lot of, it has no punch. When Nash gives his testimony, which is the opposite to what the prosecution want him to do.
Yes.
I think that's meant to be more of a punch to the gut than it is. So I'm sure there is. I wonder actually whether, I certainly agree about the first part. The first part ends when he explains who Gabrielle's father is.
Yes.
And what happened, and the stepmother dies on the stairs.
Yes.
And he says, well, that's it, the DAIN curse was over. That's the end of part 1.
Yeah. I
wonder where part 2 ends, because I wonder if coming off the drugs bit is part 3 as well.
Maybe.
And
possibly.
I wonder if it ends with him and Collinson drugged, and then perhaps Collinson being killed, because we must see that.
It's got to be.
That must happen. So 3 somewhere. So 3 starts with Collinson's father hiring him, and all the coming off the drugs and then the court scene. Well, that would make 3 a very long episode. Well,
it would, but I mean,
there'd be an extra episode, wouldn't there? There'd be an extra episode because it'd be episode 4, wouldn't it?
Well, there's only 3 episodes.
Oh, right.
There's only 3, but that doesn't mean that episode 3 isn't longer. Back in the day, that's what.
It might have been. Yeah, it could have been a double episode to finish it, I suppose.
Yeah, easily. Big grand finale, sure. Because I remember thinking the character of Mr. Fink, played by the brilliant Brent Spiner, Data, he was barely in it, but he plays a pretty big-ish role.
Yeah,
he's connected to a serious bomb incident, and he's also connected to the Temple of the Holy Grail, and he's putting on what scenes we have of him are a fantastic performance.
Yeah. He's really good.
Jittery, slimy, uneasy.
He reminded me a little bit of Dennis Weaver in Touch of Evil. The motel owner or the motel employee. That sort of, I don't really get out very much seedy.
Yes.
Well, Fink is a great name for him, isn't it? Fink is a great name for him.
Yeah.
And that bomb comes out of nowhere. I not quite jumped, but I was taken aback by that bomb.
Yeah.
Really good scene. Really good scene. So yeah, he gives a great performance. He gives a really good performance.
But I feel like there's something missing. I feel like there's bits missing of him.
There's got to be bits missing because he doesn't make sense otherwise. The whole thing doesn't make sense. So I would agree when you just said if anyone's going to watch this, I would echo the caution and say, don't expect to understand it at the end, but because you won't, because I don't think it's possible unless I watched it again with a pen and paper.
No, even that it's only possible to understand it, and this is where another issue that I had with it, and even I would probably have the same issue watching the full length version. The courtroom drama scene felt superfluous. Yeah. You could have easily just had Hamilton just surmise, do the classic denouncement, surmise everything, and end your show. Well, adding on a full-on courtroom drama, introducing the DA, I'm just like, I don't need any of this.
And it's not very well acted either. Apart from Jason Miller and James Coburn, it's not very well acted. And Gene Simmons, it's not acted well at all. The
Brent Spiner, come on.
Oh well, Brent Spiner, but I'm thinking particularly the defense lawyer. He's atrocious.
Yeah, he is awful. God,
really bad. But I think it could have ended in the hospital room.
I legit thought it was going to end there, and when it kept
Yeah.
going into a courtroom drama, I was like, "What the frick is happening?"
And by that time, I was thinking, just end now, please.
Yes.
Yes. Because I said at the start of the show that I had one big problem. My problem with this is, well, there are two actually, but the main one is the length of this thing.
Yeah.
And my secondary real big is this editing business that leaves you totally flummoxed at the end and totally bewildered about who is who and who's done what. And I am not convinced I could explain the solution to my wife and know I've got it 100% correct.
No.
Without going back and reading the book,
Yes.
And refreshing my mind. Based on just this, I'm not really sure who was doing what to whom and why.
Basically, Owen is responsible for everything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Owen did it.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I agree. The courtroom drama was all a bit too. It had no courtroom dramas have got to have tension to make them work, and this had none of it. And the performances were bad, and nothing that happens in that couldn't have happened in the hospital room when he confronts Jason Miller's character. That is just as clear as day when you watch this, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, because I think thinking about it, when they're doing the courtroom drama, and they bring in the guy who says, "Oh, Owen, who is played by Jason Miller, he hired me to kill Eric Collinson." I was like, I don't remember ever seeing that man.
Yeah, when did that happen? Who's this?
Yeah, never remember seeing that. And then there's a woman as well who is on the stand, and I'm like, I don't remember her.
Yeah, I don't think she's in it.
Yeah, I think whatever her role is was cut entirely.
Yeah. So this is why. So the reason the editing gets on my nerves is that it's not edited in such a way that avoids people turning up out of the blue that you've never seen before in the last 2.5 hours.
Yeah. I also sort of wonder if the editing kind of ruined some of the bomb stuff, because I was trying to work out, wait, so did Owen bomb himself? Did he blow himself up?
I can't answer that with a straight face, but yes, I think he did. We are told that Fink, when he shakes Owen's hand,
gives him the bomb,
and then he asks Nash to step outside because he's got something important to tell him.
And
then the bomb goes off. That's the sequence of events, and somehow Owen survives.
Hell of a risk.
Why does that make any sense?
It doesn't. Because I kept thinking the whole reason he was doing the bomb was because Gabrielle is she's in the room. She's in the next door. I thought he was just trying to kill her. I thought he was trying to kill her, and the bomb blew up on him by mistake. That's all I could think of. Because it doesn't make sense to want to blow yourself up.
It doesn't make sense otherwise. No, it doesn't make sense otherwise.
Mm-mm.
And then the clue about the window, because he for some reason he foolishly says that he heard glass tinkle, and Nash knows that his window wasn't smashed.
Yeah,
this is sort of, this feels, albeit it's Dashiell Hammett, this feels to me like an Agatha Christie.
I was going to say that. I think they were leaning very heavily into a Sherlockian Christian vibe with this, especially with how Sherlockian Hamilton was being with his deductions and things like that, which is why I wonder if 7% Solution had some influence on the making of this.
Maybe so, but the scene where he right at the beginning, almost the scene where he confronts them about the diamonds.
Yep,
that is Poirot in a drawing room with all the suspects gathered.
Absolutely,
and Owen blowing himself up in order to possibly hide the fact that he's the villain. Is like when that bloke shoots himself in the leg in Death on the Nile to give himself an alibi.
Yes.
It's that sort of golden age trick
Yes.
that is great in the Golden Age, but nobody would do it in real life. And I'm a big lover of the Golden Age.
You say that, but I watched a documentary about some crazy ass woman who was stalking some man and literally shot herself in the leg as misdirection to pretend that it was this other person who shot her. So crazy people do it.
Well, that's a particular
It's on
type
Netflix.
of lunacy.
I can't remember what it's called, but this documentary is on Netflix.
Wow, I didn't know about that. But you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I love the
Generally
Golden Age.
speaking.
I'm a big fan of the Golden Age. But you have to accept that the Golden Age is not realistic. It's not real life.
Yeah.
You know, in the way that, especially ones that lean towards being puzzles, nobody commits murders in this way.
No.
And this felt very Christian to me.
Yeah.
More than once, with a bit of hard-boiled stuff thrown in. You know, all the drugging her to keep her compliant, drugging Nash to put him off the scent reminded me of Farewell, My Lovely. You know, very much so. And I think in the book, doesn't he see like a manifestation of the devil or something in the book, or a demon or something?
Maybe. I can't remember. It's been a while.
I'm glad they left that out anyway. But the confrontation in the hospital was Sherlockian in the sense of him explaining it all. But it was just detective and criminal. There was no showmanship to it. And what happens in that room would only be known to the two of them. And that's much more noirish to me.
Definitely.
You know? Yeah. So it was an odd mix.
It was.
And I did wonder if it leaned too much towards the Golden Age type of, well, I'll blow myself up.
Were there any Christian
no one will
movies
suspect me
out
then.
at this time?
Well, yeah, because we just had Murder on the Orient Express with Albert Finney in 1974.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, yes. So,
and in the same year as this, there's Peter Ustinof's Death on the Nile, which is where he shoots himself in the leg.
So I think we're piecing it together. I think we're looking at the 70s as a whole, and we're seeing cold turkey drug narratives,
cold turkey drug addicts,
and we're seeing also Golden Age
films
sort of being dominating.
Yeah, misdirection. Yeah.
Maybe
we're getting to the bottom of the DAIN curse after all, without knowing it.
And I think someone probably looked at this and thought, oh, of all of Hammett's stories, this one is probably the one that leans the most into Golden Age-y aspects. We can run with that.
Because I think that's true as well. I think of all Hammett's books, this is the one that feels less real to me, more of a construct than a commentary. Yeah. There's none of the Glass Key social commentary in this book.
No.
There's none of the Maltese Falcon. This is what it's really like to be a private eye in this book. Even Red Harvest, which is a Continental Ops story.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Is a gangster story, isn't it? It's setting two opposing gangs against each other.
They mentioned Poisonville in this. Did you catch that?
The what? Sorry.
They mentioned Poisonville in this story at one point. I was like, Poisonville. I know that reference.
Yeah, they did. But if you boil this down, this is rich people with secrets.
Yes.
All of whom are suspects in a big country house. Well, in a big house.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's the Golden Age. That's the Golden Age.
It is
in a nutshell. I'm summarizing and generalizing, but
I would probably clarify that it's not just the rich people in a big house, because you have that in every single Marlowe story, but it's the convoluted way in which murder is happening, which surprises me that Raymond Chandler in his famous essay The Simple Art of Murder praises Hammett so much but lets him off on the DAIN curse
with this. Yeah.
But I will say, caveat, the Continental Op short stories and Red Harvest are fantastic. Not all of them, but very, very good, very gritty, tough.
Oh, they are, yeah. They're certainly worth a read.
I love them.
But I think people should know what to expect if they pick up the DAIN curse. I would go so far as to say, if you want to read a Continental Op story, don't read this one first.
No.
I think is the phrase for completists only. I think that's what I would say to Hammett fans about the DAIN curse.
I'd say so.
They all have them, all great crime writers have the for completists only entry in
Yes.
their oeuvre. So
Yes.
it's not necessarily a sort of spitting on Hammett's grave or anything. But
no, not at all. I think.
But this film suffers from the same thing. This film suffers from the same problems that I have with the DAIN CURSE, the novel, and that is, it's a silly story and it's a repetitive story.
Yes. One thing I do want to mention briefly, though, is Nancy Addison. She plays Gabrielle. Her performance is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
Like she puts on, and this is what we're saying. This is, we think of TV movies today, and they're all a bit schlocky, a bit cheesy. The performances across the board, generally, are very, very good. And Nancy's performance as someone who is a drug addict with all sorts of PTSD, coming off of drugs, and like as convoluted as the story is, her character arc of coming through that is well done and is quite clear, even in this poorly edited 3-hour version of
it is very clear.
Series.
And there are two scenes that stand out for me with her, three perhaps, and one is where he finds her with a blooded scimitar.
Yes,
and she's clearly like off her face, and the music then is quite good as well. It's 70s, but it's quite good at creating an otherworldly atmosphere. And she's rambling, and it's helped by Coburn's very still but concerned close-up expression.
Yes.
And then there's the scene by the cliffs at the ocean.
Yes.
After he's saved her, where she says how terrified she is. She's knockout in that.
Yes.
Knockout in that.
Yeah.
And then I do like, because I'm a sucker for happy endings. And I'm a bit sentimental at times. I do like when she shows him that she's cured.
Same.
I think
and the hug
those
is sweet.
three. Yeah, absolutely. Those three scenes, she is absolutely tremendous in. Yes.
And tacking on to that, the other kind of also go back to earlier when I was talking about the fatherly aspect of Hamilton Nash, that scene where him and Eric, her fiance, go to the temple and retrieve her, and she's wearing her undergarments, and he puts her clothes on.
Yeah,
that to me was. You cannot watch that scene and then think afterwards he's into her sexually, because
absolutely
he is doing it in such a kind and fatherly, caring way. And even the way he's talking, he's like, okay, how does this work? How do we do this? It's very sweet and very it's so innocent.
It is, but to cap that and to put it beyond all doubt in my mind, Eric Collinson, who is her husband, says we can't dress her, it's not decent.
Yes.
So the lover, the actual lover, isn't prepared to do what Nash is prepared to do, because Nash is looking at her on a completely different plane, and you would do anything to protect your daughter.
Yeah. Were they married in that scene? There must have been a wedding that had been cut from the movie.
Well, they're a couple, aren't they? But yeah, she ends up marrying him. She ends up being.
Yeah,
they must have cut the wedding.
Bastards.
They've probably cut more than the 3 hours we've seen.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's a 6-hour piece, and it's 3 hours, so they clearly cut 3 hours worth of story. It's nuts. Just release it as a series. Jeez, just whatever. But yes, that's another. Yeah, but those scenes
that scene, I agree. That is proof that Nash is looking at her as a father-daughter, rather than, I want to get into bed with you. To me,
yes,
because it's contrasted with the person who actually does get her into bed. So
yes. Now, I think the other massive standout in this TV show, stroke movie, stroke whatever it wants to be, is definitely Jason Miller as Owen Fitzstevens, the big bad of the piece. What a performance! He's sort of a straight Truman Capote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he is. And from the get-go, you just get it fully formed.
Yes.
It's brilliant.
I loved his performance the first time we meet him, and he's in his little robe, and he's just waxing lyrical, and he's playing the harp.
Yeah.
He's just doing all these eccentric
he's
things
got this
while
sort of blow-dried, permed hair.
Yeah, he's got a perm going on. The way he is talking, the way he is analyzing Gabrielle and her family, but doing it in such a poetic way. You're just like, I like this guy. I want to hang out with him. Like, what a standout performance, you know?
The phone rings when he's in the bath or something, doesn't it? He has to go and answer it. And he's covered in suds. I mean, that is fabulous. It's so camp. It's so camp, which when it's revealed that he is the villain, the courtroom scene undercuts that shock for me.
Yeah.
Because when he's talking to Coburn in the hospital bed, he's got this bandage around his head because he's been blown up, of course.
Blew himself up, apparently.
It's just got one eye looking at, and there's madness in that eye. Because Miller's a brilliant actor. There's madness in that eye. And that is a stark contrast between the foppish, camp, almost gay writer that he is in the rest of the film to the cold-blooded killer and malevolent brain that he's revealed to be. Yes. But then what happens in the court scene is it's full of too many eccentric characters that he then just becomes one more.
Yes.
And that spoils it for me.
Yes.
Another reason why I'd wish they'd get rid of it and just have it the showdown in the hospital. But I feel that only Miller could pull that off. Because it's never caricature. It's never caricature.
No.
And it so easily could be. And I think he's got Capote in mind.
I think so, but I also love the fact that, again, this is where it's like, some extra praise for Hammett, and that it easily could have made Owen Fitzstevens a homosexual character, and then it would have fallen into that cliche that we get with, when we talk about, say, like From Rush with Love with Kleb, the homosexual villain. Okay, whatever. Yeah. I do like the fact that he plays himself as he plays the character as camp, but he is blatantly a heterosexual. He's not necessarily into Gabrielle. He's into her mom or stepmom, and there's a whole manipulation around that. He's into I think he's also into the lady at the temple as well. So he's very much a sort of ladies' man, using that artistic author life, to swoon.
It's all
people.
affected, isn't it? It's all an affected persona. So that he doesn't come across as a predatory sexual pest, which really is what he is. What he in his roots he is. So, but a lesser actor would have made that a pantomime.
Yes, and he didn't. No,
and he doesn't at all. He's absolutely spot on with it. And when he and Coburn are on screen together, it's electric.
It is.
Even in the confines of a TV movie, it is special stuff that you see in there. And it's kudos to the project. And this is something I just wanted to mention, that Coburn and Miller both agreed to do this. And part of me wonders whether that is Hammett's reputation, and they just want to be associated with Hammett.
Maybe.
More than anything else, because we know that people do it. We know that people say, this is too good an opportunity to pass. So Ian Richardson playing Sherlock Holmes in some pretty awful American TV movies, he said, you don't pass up the opportunity to play Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
So if the scripts aren't as good, you just try and make them the best you can.
Yeah.
So something attracted these major actors, movie stars, but also good actors to this project. And I can only think, I don't think it was Swackhamer for a start. So...
He directed an episode of The Partridge Family. Of course it was Swackhamer.
Maybe they'd seen Spider-Man. I don't know. But the only thing that I can think of is that it's Hammett, and they want to be in something that is Hammett related and make it as good as they can. You know,
Because is this the first Continental Op adaptation? I can't think of another.
I can't think of another one, and I didn't even know this one existed. I can't think of another one. When you think the Maltese Falcon has been done, that been done like 3 times or something?
I've been done a few times. Glass Key twice, I think.
Twice. So
I can see the appeal.
Got to be something. So I think for actors of this standing, there has to be something that attracts them to it, and Hammett is the only thing I can see.
Hammett, or they just, I suppose even if they're not fans of Hammett, the characters are very interesting. I mean, I can't imagine an actor not wanting to play Owen, because what a villain to play. What a villain to play.
Maybe that's a cherry on the cake for Jason Miller. But Coburn had done things like Our Man Flint, things like that. He'd done the sort of private eye spy thing. So, I mean, I might be overstating this. I don't know, but it strikes me that Coburn, being the sort of actor he was, might have said, "Well, what's in it for me?" sort of thing. What's the attraction for me to do this for a 6-hour TV series? That's a big commitment for a movie star.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there has to be something, and he's already done the sort of detective side of things. So I don't know. I might be talking out the top of my. No,
I get it. I can see it. I can see that. I can see that being the appeal. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. It's a Hammett adaptation. Who would want to? And also, it's an adaptation that hasn't been done before. That's even better.
That hasn't been done. That's even better. Yeah. So he's not following in Bogart's footsteps. He's not following in Dick Powell's footsteps. He's not even following in Robert Mitchum's footsteps. He's following in only Hammett's footsteps.
Yeah.
I think that is an explanation, a valid, a believable explanation as to why you've got actors of this caliber in what is essentially a TV series.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it happens all the time now, doesn't it? It happens all the time now. People, Brian Cox, people like that, and they're in TV series left, right, and centre now, but they weren't back then. They weren't back then.
No, the landscape is an entirely different landscape now with that. I mean, the prestige. I mean, television is now more interesting than cinema. Yeah.
I mean, we got Kevin Bacon doing about 8 series of that FBI, I think, that serial killer thing, the following. Movie stars don't tend to go into TV. Well, they didn't at this time. So something has to have been the hook. And I think it's Hammett.
I can go with that. Should we rate this?
Why not?
Okay. As we do every episode, we rate every film out of 5 Falcons, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best.
This is really tough for me.
I was thinking about it, and I don't think it's as tough as what I thought it was going to be. I'm gonna give it a 3 Falcon. A 3 Falcon. It's kind of straight down the middle. It could be better, and it could be better in watching it in full. Unfortunately, we can only see a brutalized 3-hour cut of a 6-hour story, and the acting is great, the production is great, the music is really good, the story is engaging, and it does move, and I was hooked into it despite its flaws. So I can't be too harsh on it. It gave me a lot, and I had fun watching it. So it's at least this 3-hour cut, caveat, 3-hour cut is at least a solid 3 stars. Maybe the 6-hour cut is a 5 Falcon. I don't know.
We might never know. But I was going to give it 3 as well. And I when it first started, I thought, as I said earlier in the show, I thought, I don't expect very much from this. And as it got going, I thought, this is far better than I thought it was going to be. So I was thinking, if it carries on like this, I might be toying with a 4 here, because I'm really enjoying this. Yes. Really enjoying it. And then the runtime really started to kick in, and it sagged badly for me. And there was some scenes that went on forever. There's a scene where he's looking at Gabrielle in bed in the temple, I think it is, and it just goes on forever. And I thought, we don't need this. And towards the end, I was saying, just just finish, please. Now I'm done now.
Yeah.
So I really started to feel that, and then when the courtroom scene happened, it struck me really quite fiercely in the face how much had been left untold by being cut down by so much. So that I then thought, well, God, I've sat through 3 hours of this and I don't really understand it. And it isn't the same sort of lack of comprehension as you get in The Big Sleep.
No.
Because there's nowhere near as much atmosphere and pace in that. This is, this is something else.
Yeah.
But I thought Coburn and Miller were fabulous. I thought Gene Simmons was really good. I thought, you have to remind me of a name that played Gabrielle.
Nancy Addison.
Nancy Addison. I thought she was excellent. So on balance, it'd be really harsh to give it a 2. So I thought 3 is fair. But I have the same caveat as you. If the 6 hours fills in those blanks, and they're all of the same quality, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be, I would be pushing 4 to 4.5. I would think.
I think so, because again, this is a mini series. This isn't meant to be. This isn't a film. This isn't here's a 2-hour, 3-hour film, and that's where this is complicated. Because we went into a thing, oh, this is a film. Oh, wait, no, this is a mini series that's been cut down into a 3-hour film. That's nuts. Like, I wouldn't have watched 6 hours in one go. I would have watched an episode here, an episode there, and done it over a significant period of time, and then got this big full picture, which we're not able to do with this bastardized 3-hour cut. And I just feel like I need to be fair to the 6-hour series, because we are literally missing half of it.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
That could fill out and make things better.
Yeah, that's true. I almost want to go so far as to say, give us the 6-hour version at a reasonable price and availability.
Yeah,
because I would really like to do this one again.
Yeah. Definitely.
With as a full picture and a complete story, because I think, and this is perhaps an indication of how high I hold it in regard, really, beyond the Falcon scoring, because I think it would be a totally different experience.
I think it would too.
And I think it would be a very rewarding experience if it had been allowed time to breathe, because the problem it has is it's not 3 hours is a long time. But the film isn't allowed to breathe in those 3 hours either. So the reason it feels so long is because so much has got to happen in such a short, comparatively short space of time. That sounds paradoxical, but you know what I mean? Whereas over the 6 hours, as we know from box sets now on various streaming services, you don't look at it as 6 hours, you look at it as 6 episodes.
Exactly.
Whereas to present it as a feature film of 3 hours long, you've got to have a complete story, and you haven't got one. No. So I'm almost if there's anybody out there listening who has any sway on these things, get us the full version, because I would love to revisit this with a complete picture.
Yeah, because it's like you wouldn't edit down all 3 Lord of the Rings movies into one 3-hour movie. That's insane. And that's essentially what this has done.
Essentially what this has done.
The problem.
Yeah, that's essentially what this has done. So it's left gaping holes, and you don't understand why people are where they are and who they are and how they relate to it. but like I said before, the editing is presented in such a way that you should know.
It's whoever decided that we'll do a feature-length version of this, you made a bad call. You did. But
because we could have had a feature film version of it. That was really just the first sort of hour of this, with the cold turkey stuff added in, and the twist at the end that it was Owen. You could have had that.
You could have.
I think, like we said with Sin City, we could have just had a film with the Marv section. You could have just had a film with the Diamond section in this.
Yeah. It could have been done. It could have been done. I guess props for adapting Hammett's worst novel in full. It's impressive. It's not unlike the Maltese Falcon. I mean, the Maltese Falcon film is pretty darn close to the book itself. So Hammett has had a pretty okay run in adaptations, being quite faithful. Glass Key maybe being the outlier of being so-so with its adaptation. But anyway, I don't know. There we go.
Well, there we go.
3 Falcons from us.
Yeah, it's recommend. I would recommend people look at it as a curiosity more than anything else. But yeah, I think it's worth checking out.
I think so.
And that wraps up our investigation. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another case. In the meantime, please like and subscribe, and be sure to take care walking down those mean streets.